Welcome to the True and Constant podcast presented by Gamma Phi Beta Sorority in celebration of 150 years of sisterhood. Each month, incredible alumni of our sisterhood join us to celebrate their stories, experiences, and pearls of wisdom in Gamma Phi Beta and beyond. We are your hosts, Emma Oremus of Gamma Tau Chapter and Lex Stewart of Eta Omicron Chapter.
Today, we are joined by Gamma Phi Beta sister Autumn Hansen from the University of Idaho, Z Chapter. Autumn has served as Gamma Phi Beta's international president since 2020, and she is also a member of Gamma Phi Beta Foundations, and she is also a Gamma Phi Beta Foundation trustee. Autumn has her Bachelor in Science degrees in Criminal Justice Studies, Psychology, and Sociology, as well as a master's degree in Social Work from Indiana University. Please join us in welcoming Autumn to the show. Autumn, welcome on to True and Constant. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Emma and Lex. It's a pleasure to be joining you.
Good to meet you, Autumn. I think as Emma talked about before we hopped on, I'm so familiar with your name and I'm very familiar with your work. And so it's very cool to get to actually sit down and chat with you. This is really neat.
I know, a little surreal.
Yeah, it feels the same for me too. I've been following closely the podcast and really enjoy. I've listened to all the episodes and look forward to when they are published. So appreciate all that you're doing to help amplify our members' stories. I think it's so cool.
Oh, well, we're having a fun time doing it, if I may say so myself. No, it's truly been amazing to learn everyone's stories and all of the incredible insights that they have to share. So this is really crazy to be talking to our international president, the one who's leading us all. It's pretty remarkable. So Autumn, you have had an amazing journey. You're in such a unique leadership position. I'm curious a little bit about your origin story. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you're from, maybe your upbringing, and kind of your college experience that introduced you to Gamma Phi Beta?
Sure. I mean, buckle in. It's a wild ride. So
perfect.
So I hail from the Pacific Northwest. I was born in Spokane, Washington, but grew up in northern Idaho. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and my mom and dad, my dad actually worked outside the home in the lumber industry for most of his career, and my mom stayed at home. Grew up in a pretty conservative kind of peripheral religion that created amazing community, but also gave me some worldviews that college really broadened or expanded. So, growing up, in my mind, I would become a mom. I would not likely work outside the home. I might be involved in my community, but those were a lot of the role models that I saw around me. My parents always said, "Oh, when you go to college," and that was just never even a question, which is amazing because my dad did do some college classes, but neither of my parents at the time were college graduates. And so I am a first generation college student.
Wow.
It was just part of the story, and part of the expectation was that I would go on to college after high school. It was often thought, though, that would be a religiously affiliated college, which, there's more to that story, but ended up really loving high school. And I remember distinctly having a high school guidance counselor. I had great grades. I was really involved, good standardized testing scores. And knowing my family situation, he said, the best that you can hope for is a state school. I remember being devastated. My high school sweetheart at the time was looking at all these Ivy League schools and, planning amazing things. And I felt really limited in that, but also didn't really know any other path forward. So ended up going to the University of Idaho. And thank goodness for that, because it was a place that I was able to truly find myself, flourish, build community, when all said and done, it was the place I needed to be. But it was with some heartache that I landed there. So Idaho is really interesting because it's one of the few campuses that recruits before classes even start in August, so before fall term begins. And when I had enrolled for classes, it was at a satellite campus in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I remember going to the community college satellite office, that was there, and meeting with a young woman who said, "Hey, have you considered sorority recruitment?" She was staff at the institution, and I had no clue. I mean, I grew up not watching a lot of TV. I didn't see movies, had I was just a very sheltered upbringing in some ways. And I saw on the brochure, leadership, sisterhood. I'm like, well, I already have 3 sisters and they're okay, and I love leadership. So sure, I had no ideas, the stereotypes, none of it. So I signed up for sorority recruitment. I drove down to campus. It was about an hour and a half from my home, with a friend who was also going through recruitment from high school. And that's how my time at the University of Idaho started. So went through formally structured recruitment, was very overwhelmed at the experience, but also really enjoyed getting to know so many people rather quickly. Found Gamma Phi Beta and really appreciated the way that I felt in that space, and came to realize I was dirty rushed, if we're being totally honest. I was told there were women of the same religious background as myself. There were not. But I was like, you know what? This seems like a solid place. These women are really nice. I feel comfortable here. And then what was even more unusual is that I moved into the chapter house before I even started classes. So we started living in immediately.
Oh.
Yes.
You were full member, right?
There is no chance to question your decision. It's happening. You are moving.
You're in.
You find this small closet to make home, and that is it. And so, I was sent to school with a book of stamps and $100 in cash. And my parents were like, call if you need anything, because they didn't know. And so truly my entry into, higher education was a little overwhelming, very ill-informed, and not from any negligence, but just a lack of knowing. And Gamma Phi Beta was the place that really set me up to be able to navigate college life. Before classes began, members of the chapter took the freshmen around campus to know where our classes were, before that first day of school, and get us comfortable, and, make sure that we all knew who was within that class with you, because we all, had at least 1 or 2 sisters with us, new members. So that was really critical for me to transition and feel safe and supported. I think another thing that really struck me, during the initiation week or inspiration week, there was a night that the chapter would rent out a theater. Ooh. And a movie theater. And that was very exciting. And I remember talking to my big sis, Robin, and telling her in advance that I was a little nervous about this because I didn't watch R-rated movies. And so I was feeling like, this may be something I just have to sit out, because I don't think it's reasonable to expect 120 women to change their viewing preferences for just me. But that wasn't the case. So Robin talked to our new member educators. They made sure that the movie was PG-13 so Autumn could enjoy.
Oh, that's so sweet.
My heart.
It was such a small thing, but it really made me feel seen and supported, and that I belonged in a place where just as easily I could have been told, yeah, probably not for you. So that was really impactful in my appreciation for what belonging and sisterhood looks like in practice.
Yeah, that's a key step. I mean, recruitment is one thing, but the retention and fostering and maintaining those initial warm, fuzzy feelings, it's just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that goes beyond sorority life. That's any sort of cultivating a team, a connection, a community.
Without question. Yeah. That idea of investing and making sure that you are not taking for granted those relationships or those connections. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so for our listeners who maybe were not involved in sorority life, or maybe they were like myself, I had a non-traditional sorority rush experience. I was, for context, Autumn, I was part of a chapter that was being founded for the first time at Ohio University. So that process is a little bit different than other folks. But for folks who are not familiar with the term dirty rush, what does that mean?
Thank you for asking for that clarification. So, in the experience of formally structured recruitment, there are many, many rules that are in place, and they tend to legislate to the lowest common denominator of behavior. And one of those behaviors is what is called dirty rushing, which is when someone violates the rules in order to secure a bid or ask someone to become a member and to convince them to join. And so this can be done in lots of different ways. It can be inviting potential new members out to parties, or talking to them during a recruitment event and saying, this is all just a formality, you will get in, or yeah, actually here we have all of the things that you want and then some, when maybe in fact you don't. So very uncouth, but something that does happen from time to time.
You'd mentioned, Autumn, this piece about college broadening your horizons, and it sounds like it broadened your community as well. Like, I'm hearing the community space of Gamma Phi. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that broadening of your horizons look like in Gamma Phi, or just thinking about your college experience in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think higher education in general just gave me exposure to people that were different than me, that had different life experiences, different orientations to the world, and people that were really comfortable challenging my worldview, and that were willing to engage in meaningful dialogue. I was fortunate to have a lot of mentors, both at the University of Idaho and in Gamma Phi Beta. So women that in the chapter I looked up to and saw as models for what I might be able to accomplish. I didn't see a lot of women in leadership positions. I didn't see a lot of women that were winning the election, whatever it was. And, I had been the secretary in the student government. I'd always been like the supporting actress, and I was okay with that. But then I joined the sorority and saw that, women were taking on bigger opportunities and doing so very well. And that was incredibly inspiring. I also loved to learn. And so I graduated with 3 undergraduate degrees, in part because I had great mentors in my sisters and in campus faculty, college faculty, and saying, well, if you take this class and this class, you'd be able to achieve this. I had a faculty advisor that would waive the credit limit each term so I could take 1 or 2 more credits.
Wow.
Because they knew I love learning. And so to be able to dig in and just soak it all up was truly a gift. And my college community created space for me to do that. I think that as a chapter leader, and then I went on to be student government president, like the student body president at the University of Idaho. I was faced with challenges that are pretty amazing when you think about all that's happening in the lives of someone in their early 20s. And so being able to grapple with challenging situations and appreciate the gray that exists between, policy and procedure, and, really takes into account people. I think that was when I came to maybe have a bit more flexibility in the way I saw the world and in the way that my brain worked, and just having that cognitive flexibility and adaptability to let go of the need to be right, and really just appreciate the need to learn and listen.
Yeah, I'm so curious. First, I'm imagining we'll have quite a few collegiates who are listening to this episode who are living what you experienced. What were some of those concrete lessons? Like, if we're creating a study guide for those, emerging young college leaders, what were some hard, concrete lessons that you learned during that period that you would want to pass on to them if they're listening?
One that still resonates with me today is connecting with folks and building a group of trusted friends or advisors that will tell you the truth. Find the people that care enough about you to have the brave conversations, to provide the feedback, to challenge either a behavior or a belief. I think that is so critical. Oftentimes we talk about sisterhood, and there's this belief that I should always feel supported in Gamma Phi Beta, and I should always feel, that it's that soft landing place. But there are times where it is the rock for a reason. We need those sisters that will say, hey, whoa, that was not in your values, or gosh, that really seems different than what I've seen from you in the past. And, I think of some of my pledge class sisters and conversations that they had with me that really challenged me, but were critical to my growth as a leader and thinking about how I was either congruent or incongruent with values.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. And other leadership lessons, go for it. I think that's the piece that is really I think a lot of times these self-limiting beliefs float around in our head, and we have this whole narrative worked up about all the reasons why not. And giving yourself permission to go for it and to take the risk and to say yes, even when you don't check all of those boxes, is so important to your growth and development as a leader. And so, I think about how we know that generally when men go to apply for jobs, they'll look at a job description and they're like, I check about a third of these. So sounds good. Where women, if we don't check every single box, self-select out. And I think a lot about how that belief drove some of my early leadership decisions. And that is something that, I hope younger and emerging leaders can appreciate and take advantage of as those opportunities. I think another leadership lesson is that if people aren't mad at you, you're probably not doing a very good job.
Yeah. Can't please everyone when you're in a position of helping other people.
Yes. And in that idea of leadership, I think that this idea that, if everyone's happy, if peace has been achieved, if there is contentment and harmony, you have done your job. But one thing I learned early on was that there is a path of least resistance that ensures the feathers aren't ruffled and people remain comfortable, but it also doesn't ensure that you're able to boldly move an organization or a group forward in the ways that are needed. So letting go of that need to please everyone and to help everyone feel really comfortable and change. And I still learn that lesson today. So that's one that I'm like, and I'm taking note for myself, but being able to recognize that your job as the leader is to drive the organization towards values and bring as many folks along as are interested in joining and welcome them into that, but that knowing there are times where that it's just not possible for everyone to join into that journey.
Yeah, I think there's so many things you said right there that have even come up as my time as a public relations advisor for the chapter I help out with, where there's a little bit of worry of these are my friends, the popularity contest mentality. We also like to say, this is your place to mess up. And I think there's something freeing in that, make mistakes, grow, use that to go into the real world even better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think about the many mistakes I made in the early stages of my Gamma Phi Beta career that I wasn't able to catch for myself. I still make mistakes. I just now recognize them more readily in myself. But
we're human.
we are human, and
we don't have a robot president
100% of the time. Yeah. So I think having folks that are willing to say, hey, that was not quite right because they care, is really truly a gift that the organization can offer. It's interesting, when our founders began Gamma Phi Beta, some of our early meeting minutes show that one of the tasks that they outlined at the start of their meetings was to designate a critic. And the critic was someone who, right? They would sit in in their meetings, and they would share their presentations that would be intended for the classroom later. And the critic's job was to critique, was to challenge and provide that critical feedback for the performance that they were giving, so that when they went into the world, they were prepared. They knew they'd heard the worst of it or received the hardest feedback from people they knew cared about them. So that when they went into the world to face people that didn't believe they belonged or should be there, that they were ready.
Rules. Also, we need to reinstate this to a degree, I think, in a lot of the meetings that we do. I think a lot of our interactions could use critics. I like, genuinely, I think there is almost to your point, Autumn, of like, conflict can be really productive. I think we often speak about conflict as like an inherently negative thing, but like it is okay for people to be a little bit in conflict with the message that you're giving or the thing that you're saying, as long as, the goal is that we're having an equitable conversation about it, right? Like we get to argument territory, maybe we take a breather, but there's huge value in conflict. So, in thinking about this, like building this community of people, if we're thinking about like your recommendation to collegiates of like building a community, being in community with one another, how do you find these people that are willing to both like maybe be the fun party person and also hold space for you in conflict? Like, how do you find these people? How have you come to the people in your community, Autumn?
I love that question. And I know when you talked with Harper in the last episode, she talked a little bit about being in DC and making those connections and having different groups of people. I think in my mind, it starts with, of course, making those social connections, just being open to knowing someone and really seeing them. But then also being willing to demonstrate some vulnerability and doing some testing to see, how does this person respond when I give glimpses into that deeper part of myself that might have self-doubt or might feel shame or might question my worthiness? And how do these people respond? Is it that my vulnerability is brushed off, or is it bristled at, or is it heard and explored? And, when people are really willing to listen and to explore and accept without trying to fix, those are the people that I think are worth further investment. Those are the ones that when you are in that space of vulnerability, that they are able to just be there with you, are the ones that you can trust to delve a little bit deeper. And I think that's hard. It's kind of an art. And I think that what's unique about college is that you're all in this experiment of living together, of learning together at the same time. Like when you think about it, there's very few times in life where you have that kind of collective experience with folks of a general age group, of a general life transition, who are living and learning together. And so I think it does require a bit more kind of experimentation and exploration, maybe a little bit of courage, to try to find those folks in other areas or times of life where maybe those communities aren't built in to the way you're interacting.
Yeah, it's definitely a very huge transition. And I think you're right that it is a unique situation too, when you're not alone, you have a mass of people going through it all together with you.
Yes. I remember talking to a Gamma Phi Beta friend, and just sharing some of the challenges I was feeling in adulthood. We had, my partner and I had children a little bit later than those in the community we live in, and voicing the challenge of finding common ground with folks. And she pointed out, she said, some people are initiators. Some people are the ones that are saying, well, let's go to coffee or let's do this. And she's like, you're an initiator. You're comfortable doing that. And there's an element of rejection that might come with that. And knowing that that's because not everyone's an initiator, and that's not a reflection of your potential as a friend, but really just in folks' orientation to how they do relationships. And that was helpful in creating a little bit more acceptance for myself.
Yeah, I think that's a really big part. It just in general, you've got to put effort into the things that you want, and maybe it'll come from someone else, but you can't guarantee that. The only thing you can guarantee is you're the one doing it. So
without question.
Well, thank you, Autumn, for sharing about the piece about community. I think especially as we talk more with folks, these themes of almost like what you were mentioning earlier of shedding the beliefs you maybe had as a younger person and evolving into the person you're becoming. And there's also this reoccurring theme of community. These are sort of like the two threads that have come up in so many of our conversations with people, is that community and the evolution of self a little bit, if you want to get real academic about it.
I love that. Well, and I do think that is the purpose of Gamma Phi Beta is those two things, Lex. The idea that you are with a group that you seek to grow at, the idea that you belong to a group that has enough space for you to change and evolve and grow and expects that, but that also continues to value the connection with one another.
Yeah, speaking of continuing to value that connection with one another, I'm curious about next steps. I don't want to say dreaded, but the next scary steps of graduating college and thinking, what's next? We're all on this really similar trajectory of being in really similar stages. And I think once that graduation cap comes on, everyone is in all different directions, be it a job, be it travel, be it grad school, whatever the next steps are. Some people are getting married. Some people are not getting married. Some people are having kids. Some people are like, no, I'm not going to have kids. It goes everywhere. So I'm curious about the next steps for you after college. What did career starts look like? And how would you say Gamma Phi Beta was involved in your life in that next transition into adulthood?
So I traveled as a collegiate leadership consultant out of college.
We love those.
For Gamma Phi Beta. Yes. So, the stories I could tell. And
so what is a collegiate leadership consultant for those who might not be familiar?
So collegiate leadership consultants are a group of recent graduates, usually fresh out of an undergraduate program, who are Gamma Phi Betas, who are hired to work as members of international headquarters staff. So it is a paid position. It's typically about 9 months long, where you travel around North America to visit Gamma Phi Beta chapters on college campuses. You'll go in for, 3-4 days. You meet with the officers. You might assist with recruitment or a chapter retreat, any array of a philanthropy event, a fundraiser for Building Strong Girls and Girls on the Run. And then you pack up and go to the next chapter. It's a really unique experience from an employment perspective, from a development perspective. And it's one that I wouldn't trade for anything, and I would never, ever do again.
Those are the best.
Yes, those are the ones where you're like, yep, that was amazing, and I'm good. And it was such an important foundational experience for me in Gamma Phi Beta and building the relationships that I've carried forward to today. Some of my best friends I traveled with, some of the volunteers I worked with as a collegiate leadership consultant are women who are fully integrated into my life, mentors, supports, they know my daughters. I mean, they are part of our family. So it's a really amazing experience. And it was a good one for me because it allowed me to travel around North America. It allowed me to, in a way, give back to Gamma Phi Beta after I had received so much, and to be that ambassador for the organization. It allowed me to recognize and learn that not all chapters were as strong or healthy as my own collegiate chapter, and that not all Gamma Phi Betas love Gamma Phi Beta the way that I do. And so it was really eye-opening for me in consideration of my commitment to the organization in the long run, that I really grew my understanding of Gamma Phi Beta. And most members don't get that opportunity. You go to college and you have a great experience with your collegiate chapter, and then you graduate and you were a Gamma Phi Beta. And so seeing the bigger picture was a really unique benefit from that role, and from attending convention as a collegiate officer, which is another conversation.
Hi, listeners. I'm Jessica Budjanowski, and welcome to our True Connection segment. It's your source for Gamma Phi Beta information, special stories of our sisterhood, and tools to get you involved. Now, as I've been listening to Autumn talk about being a collegiate leadership consultant, I keep getting nostalgic. You see, I too was a CLC. It was one of those jobs that I knew I wanted, but I was never prepared for it. And I came out of it as a totally different person. I came from a chapter of 27 women. I never went through formal recruitment because I was a charter member of my chapter, and I never even held an executive position. I remember going through CLC interviews and talking about the president's badge, and I boldly said, "We don't have one of those." Little did I know, I had a lot to learn. Now, collegiate leadership consultants are recent college graduates who travel to Gamma Phi Beta collegiate chapters across the United States and Canada, and they're promoting officer, member, and chapter success. They're professional staff members, and they provide leadership and training. They guide chapters in self-assessment, they facilitate workshops, and they provide information, suggestions, and ideas. And collegiate leadership consultants gain valuable professional skills to really prepare them for a successful career in so many different fields later on in life. CLCs serve many roles while on the road. They can be a teacher, a motivator, or even a confidant. Now, being a CLC taught me so much about myself. It gave me a deep passion for our sisterhood. I traveled to places all over the country. I learned to ask for things I needed, like towels and even food. I made lifelong friendships. I learned I could survive on a few hours of sleep during recruitment, and I became a confident leader. My first visit was to Oklahoma State University. Now, this is one of our largest recruitments in the country. I was thrown into the deep end, but my sisters wouldn't let me fail. They taught me all about recruitment, and I thrived. This is such a very special program, and I never take that for granted. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the CLC program or to apply to be one, visit gammaphibeta.org. Now, let's get back to Autumn. I'm Jessica Budjanowski. Let's keep connected until next time.
After I traveled, I actually interviewed for a position on a college campus to be a fraternity and sorority advisor, and for a small private liberal arts school. And I was the only person that was interviewed without a master's degree of the 10 or so that they interviewed. And I was hired with two other folks who had master's degrees, but that was absolutely because of my experience in Gamma Phi Beta. That my time as a collegiate leadership consultant made me competitive in being able to serve as a campus-based fraternity and sorority advisor. I did that for about 2.5, 3 years, and quickly realized that my love is for Gamma Phi Beta.
Yeah.
And for women in fellowship. So I had the opportunity to work with both men's fraternities and women's sororities, and really began to form some early opinions around our enmeshment and how we have arrived at that place, and where that is maybe in conflict with some of our origin story, and where that might be limiting us in future versions of Gamma Phi Beta. So I stepped away from that, did a 1-year stint for a professional association, just working on staff, and sought out therapy. Got a great therapist who did career coaching. And yes, so Lex, in your world, that career coaching can make a world of difference. I didn't have a lot of models for career life outside of Gamma Phi Beta. I didn't know many women that were working outside the home in my own community. And so going to a career coach really opened my eyes to the possibilities. So, took an assessment, and granted, I had 3 undergraduate degrees because I love learning. I love to learn everything. That is my dream state. So
and up until that point, that's what you're an expert in, right? Learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it was really helpful. I did an assessment, and it was like the clergy, a judge, or a social worker, which I still am quite unsure. It's like, that sounds like a bad joke, and they walk in a bar, into a bar. But for me, it was social work that really caught my interest. One of the challenges in working at the institution I did was that I was faced with a level of privilege I had just not experienced before. My family, we grew up in a double wide mobile home on the river next to the lumber mill. And, I just didn't have that level of affluence. Our family trips were to ghost towns and cheese factories on the way to see family. And
love it.
I encountered privilege in a way that was really jarring when I worked that first job after being a consultant, and saw the parts of fraternity and sorority life that were malaligned with my own beliefs in relation to accessibility and opportunity and privilege. So finding social work after that experience and recognizing the the variability of careers I could have within that degree field was very exciting to me. Knowing too that emphasis in social justice and equity, diversity, inclusion, that those things were baked into the work was something that really spoke to me. So did my master's program, did some internship placements, a community center, worked with families involved with our Department of Child Services. So folks that were separated and seeking reunification following incidents of abuse or neglect. Did that for a few years in a home-based setting. Worked with sexually maladaptive youth, survivors, a wide variety of folks that were all court mandated. Really cut my teeth in the field in that space, and also learned that I couldn't do that for a lifetime and be well. So stepped away. This is a risk I took. I said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the next thing lined up, but I have to step away for my own well-being. And I remember talking to my supervisor, who had also mentored me in graduate school, and feeling really disenchanted when her response was, well, this is just the work. Like, there must be something wrong with you. Like, you dig deep. And that was the sign that was not my place, that I needed to honor that feeling I had in myself that said, this is not where you thrive. So left within 3 months, had a new job working at our pediatric hospital in the emergency department. It's our only level 1 trauma center in the state. And so worked there as a social worker for 6 years. Loved it. Ended up becoming a mom while I worked there, which made that work a lot harder because we dealt with cases of abuse and neglect. And then moved into employee assistance programs within the same system. So I've stayed there and now lead our employee assistance program.
Wow. Yeah. And I do want to know, because actually, Autumn, some of your story is a little similar to my experience too, being in a little bit more of a clinical setting and, changing things up a little bit. And I just want to mark for everyone listening that there's just so many ways you could be a healer, and I think that some of that is your work in bringing that sense of belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion into your leadership roles in Gamma Phi Beta and creating a much more responsive community. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of things that you can pick up from your life experiences that lead you in different directions that will always amount to something that matters.
Such an important call out, Emma. I think that, that is often something that in my early experiences as a leader, I would grapple with, if I'm not at the state house stairs, protesting, then I am not making a difference. But there literally is a spectrum of advocacy that has to happen at all levels. And so it's deciding, where am I the most impactful? All of those types of advocacy have a place, but knowing that having it woven into your day-to-day and advancing those tenets in your work and in your life is just as meaningful and a part of that larger fabric that ensures progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a little bit curious, what were some direct changes that you took from those experiences in sort of improving upon Gamma Phi Beta's structures?
Yeah. Oh, let's see. So I think there were a lot of things that carried forward with me. And I think that when we think about leadership and these major life transitions, one thing that I think is really critical and has to be called out is finding a champion, finding a person who, as a mentor, is aware of what you dream and desire, but that also is in rooms that you're interested in being a part of and that says good things about you behind closed doors and opens those doors for you. And I was fortunate in Gamma Phi Beta to find a champion in Krista Davis, who was the collegiate vice president when I was a collegiate leadership consultant. So I worked with her in that space. And, she gave me great insight into the opportunities for growth and development within the organization, and also really modeled to me that idea of weaving in those values of accessibility and equity into the work you're doing. She encouraged me when I was 27 to run for international council, and I did, and I was elected. I was 27 years old, and
amazing.
That in and of itself as a lived experience was profound, because I faced a great deal of I'm trying to think of a good word here. I faced consternation and a tacit opposition to my presence in that space. Our organization had not had folks that young serving on the board of directors. And so even that, and knowing that showing up and providing what I could was a type of advocacy was important. And then I started working in our education department and really trying to build teams that had a variety of different perspectives and took into consideration the types of experiences our collegiate members were having themselves and making sure that was reflected in our educational programming. There have been many things throughout my time on international council. I'm trying to think of some specifics right now, and it's a bit challenging. So we may have to come back to that one. But,
No problem. Yeah. Quick note, something about young leadership. I have a coworker who just told me this the other day. They said that they do have a mentor who's older than them, but they have a mentor who's younger than them too. Having sort of that. Just the different perspective that it helps you grow so much. Yes. So doubling down.
On international council, we actually had reverse mentoring program. So we have had mentors that are current collegiate members who provide us their guidance and suggestions, their coaching, to help us grow and learn and be better leaders.
Love it.
I love that. I mean, I think your story kind of speaks to this, but as like younger people, it feels like you can never really win. Like as a younger person, if you're like below the age of 30, especially if you are feminine presenting, like good luck on being held like to a standard, I guess. Like there's just a way that you're interacted with as a younger person. And then you have the like 30 to 40 where you're like kind of there. And then by the time you get to 50 as a woman, you disappear, right? Like in the way things are currently exist. So I think that there's something super powerful about giving younger people this opportunity to have their voices heard in a very clear way. That is so freaking cool. That like makes my heart so happy as a fellow educator. Also, Autumn, it's really interesting when you were talking about the different careers that were recommended to you of clergy, judge, and then social worker. It feels like if we take these titles at face value, that maybe you're someone who's very good at like seeing people as like full, beautiful humans, and like welcoming them into maybe a system or a structure and helping them navigate that. Like that sort of feels like maybe those are your superpowers.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel seen by you. Yes. Well, I've done the Strengths Finder, and my my top is strategic. My second is individualization. So that ability to see people, connect with them, as they are, and accept and appreciate them, as they are. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, sister. I'm impressed.
It's partially the career coaching. I also just love patterns. Like you gave me 3 things that were kind of loosely connected, and my brain was like, how do we connect these dots? Yeah.
Love it.
With that in mind, though, with like this skill for you, Autumn, what does that look like in your day to day? Like, how do you get to exercise this skill of like being able to like bring people in, see them as full humans, and then help them navigate these like sometimes very funky and confusing systems?
Yeah, I think it really does give me an advantage in being able to tap into folks quickly and understand at their core motivations, interests, values, dreams, fears. And so being able to use that to reframe experiences for folks or give them a little bit more cognitive flexibility in their situations is critical as a social worker, but as a leader too. That idea of trying to help folks see possibility without ignoring their own lived experience. And it's a fine thread or needle to thread, but that idea of how do you, in a dialectic space, both things being true, hold someone's truth and present another and allow both to coexist and really give them a chance to see potential. So, I think in my work, in coaching and supporting our clinical counselors, in helping leaders navigate tricky situations with employees, it's asking really good open-ended questions and giving them a chance to arrive at conclusions themselves rather than give the answer. And I think that as a leader, to create buy-in, to get folks to a place where they are the energy behind the change, it's doing that as well, really giving them a chance to connect with concepts and connect with their personal values and reflect and be open to other possibilities.
Yeah, having hard conversations is definitely a skill. I think that a lot of people hope to build. It's one of a lot of value. What would, I guess, your next thoughts be for those hard conversations that don't go so well? Like, what would you advise people with where to go next?
I think one thing that is important to know as folks are learning and growing and coming into their own as a leader or just a human being is that very few things are permanent. So the idea that you may have a conflict or a conversation that you just really mess up. And it's okay to later go back and say, can I have another try at that? I really botched that. Can I do that once more? Because I think I owe it to you. I think I owe it to myself to really try to do better. And I wonder if you'll give me that opportunity. So I think that's one part of conflict, is knowing that even when you screw up royally, that you always have the ability to go back and try again and make it right in most cases. I think in navigating conflict, to the points we made earlier, Lex, you were talking about conflict being constructive and that it can be a very good thing. And I often say that if I am not engaging in conflict, I share this with my partner, who I'm sure doesn't appreciate it, but the point at which you should be concerned is when I stop engaging in conflict, because it means I don't care. I've given up. I'm not interested. I'm not engaged. And so setting some norms around conflict in the communities that you are a member of or that you are leading, and recognizing that conflict is a sign that you are showing up and that you care enough to have the hard conversations, to be uncomfortable, to be awkward, to kind of reframe that as an opportunity for your collective growth as a group, I think is really important.
I love that when you change the way you look at things, the things change. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think when I was in grad school, someone had positioned this idea to me of like, when someone is arguing with you and they're very like heated, they're very animated, it's coming from a place of like deep emotions about the thing that they're talking. Well, sometimes not about the thing. Sometimes it's about the thing below the thing.
Below the thing.
Yeah. But like that passion, that anger that sometimes can be very surface level is like feeling an emotion. It's just maybe being directed in a way that we could redirect in a constructive way. But it's like, because that person cares so much is partially why they're like in that situation. So I love that.
Yeah.
Love that reframing.
It's always important to, if you can maintain that level of curiosity, to think what is the why behind this? What is the, fuel that I'm, feeling the burn on, right? and that can help. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
I love that.
Well, switching gears just ever so slightly, I would love to let the listeners know a little bit more about what the day in the life of the international president looks like. What do you oversee? What are some of your things that you cover on a day-to-day basis that a lot of people who might be in their chapter meeting right now don't even know is happening?
Sure. International president is such a unique position for so many reasons, but it is a volunteer position. So this is done in addition to the other hats I wear. Day to day is different. It just depends on the day. So as I think about some of the days I've had this past week, it's meeting with our chief executive officer at international headquarters. As international president, I am her supervisor. So providing support as she is working through some of the operational matters that are her responsibility, being a thought partner, supporting her in the ways that ensure we're all singing the same song moving forward. It's connecting with other leaders. So the chair of our facilities management company board of directors, and also the board of trustees for the Gamma Phi Beta Foundation chair, and having collective conversations with them about current state, what we are anticipating, what's coming next, things that impact our interdependencies. Right now, we're preparing for convention. So it's a lot of reviewing scripts and writing and preparing and reviewing and writing some more. So lots of content review that I'm doing in that space. So working on the state of the sorority address. What we are going to reflect on and amplify from the past 2 years. It's, small things like day to day, we get emails about mail votes to appoint so-and-so to this role or to take action in this way. We've been vetting candidates to lead our strategic strategic plan work. So outside consultants that we will hire to come in to help our organization define the strategic plan for the next 5 years. So I've had some interviews with candidates as a member of the Governance and Personnel Committee, which is another board level committee I'm involved with. That group has worked to vet candidates for that work. And so each day is a little bit different. It's a lot of phone, it's a lot of text, a lot of email, but really holding the responsibility to make sure that the vision is clear, that the destination point is clear, and that we're all moving in that direction as an organization. So it's a lot like being a chapter president, just at a different scale. It is, yeah.
Much and I jumbo size.
when I was a collegiate leadership consultant and would talk to women who were interested in being chapter president, I'd say, well, this is my one question for you. Are you okay with losing control of your schedule? Because if you are not, this is not the position for you. Because a president's job is to make sure that all of the people that are on that executive team are operating and supported and doing what needs to be done in those spaces and making sure that team is cohesive, and then responding to crisis. Whatever the latest thing is that pops up, you got to be ready to address that. And that is absolutely part of my job as well.
That sounds like some real servant leadership, like that mentality of showing up and sort of being the leader that isn't necessarily at the top, but at the bottom, lifting everything else up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does that feel like?
It's interesting. I like another phrase I've heard that I really like is legislative leadership. The idea of standing in the center and working among all of the concentric rings of the organization. It's been interesting because I have had to adapt that leadership style in my current work of leading an employee assistance program. I tend to be very legislative, and there are times where sometimes when you're the boss, you just have to make the call. Can't do everything by, consensus. And so that's been an adjustment in my new, area of leadership outside of Gamma Phi Beta, but definitely a part of my journey within the organization. So,
Autumn, can you tell us why you do what you do? You mentioned that it's a volunteer position. So you're doing this because you care, I would assume. So why do you care about this so deeply? Why do you do the work that you do?
Yeah. So, I talked about my origin story and not having a lot of women that were models of what life could be like outside of motherhood. I remember one woman in our community who had a law degree, but she didn't have children. And, there was this idea that you could do a few things, maybe, but not all of the things. Gamma Phi Beta truly opened my eyes to the possibilities for women in the world and gave me models I could follow to experience or achieve some of the things that were most important to me. And what's most amazing, and I think the saddest part of our member experience, is that for most people that ends at college, and there is so much more beyond that time to experience that enrichment. And there are very, very few spaces where women gather in intergenerational groups.
Especially outside of family structures. Yeah.
And family structures have changed so much, right? And, that is one thing that keeps me deeply engaged, is knowing that there is a spectrum of sisters who at any point in time I can connect to understand a different lived experience, and I think that while Gamma Phi Beta was critical in my college years, it was when I moved to a new city and made connections there. When I started to look at jobs outside of higher education and didn't know what to do or where to go, that I had those sisters providing some insight and wisdom. I think about, when we decided to grow our family, we faced fertility issues. And I didn't know anyone in my community that had dealt with that. But in Gamma Phi Beta, I had a network of women that were able to say, hey, you should talk to so-and-so, or you might connect with this person. That's something that I wouldn't have found in my workplace or in, my, even my own collegiate chapter, because I moved away from Idaho. I live in Indiana now, another I state, but most folks don't get out of the Pacific Northwest. So I love my Z chapter sisters, but I don't get to see them nearly as often as I would like. But, women that even this last weekend, I was with a sister and was talking to her about how to advocate for different job titles and a promotion and what might I do and what would this look like, and she's older than I am, different lived experiences and wisdom, and that is something that keeps me connected to Gamma Phi Beta and wants to see it for other women. I also truly believe women will save the world, and we are far from a place where women are given access to the experiences that even our founders were hoping for. I have 6.5-year-old twin girls, and seeing the world through their eyes is shocking at times, because their innocence and belief is so strong. And, we'll read books. And for example, we're looking at a book that had pictures of every single president of the United States. And, one of my daughters says, but they're all men. And I said, yes, they are. And I said, but we did have Barack Obama as a president. He was a Black man. She said, but he's still a man. She was like, I do not accept this. And it was just so fascinating. We were talking about elections, and, they're like, well, I say, how many presidents do you think have been women before we viewed all of that? And they're like, well, I don't know, at least like 50,
Yeah, right. Like half.
Right. And for them, it's just mind boggling. My daughter, we were traveling and I looked over and she had written in a notebook, and she's like, girls can do anything around the world. Girls are not treated well, but you can change that, and the fact that we are still having to have those conversations for young women today tells me there is a place for Gamma Phi Beta. And that is what drives my continued involvement, is truly a belief that women will save the world. And when we are in fellowship with one another, magic happens. And that is how we get there.
What an amazing why. I feel like that is amazing. Well, what are some ways that alumni can get involved in Gamma Phi Beta beyond that graduation day?
So there are lots of ways that folks can stay connected to the organization. One really simple one is make sure that your email and phone number are up to date with international headquarters. Get registered on the website so that you can access that information and change it as it might change in your lifetime. We do have a job posting component to our website, an opportunity for folks to go and look at positions that are open, chapter advisor roles, committee roles, different things like that. So go there and check it out. There's folks that you can connect with on staff and in volunteer roles to just have that informational interview to say, tell me a little bit about what it's like to do XYZ.
Yes.
Knowing that, there's lots of ways to get involved, to be connected. Alumni chapters, even just showing up, I think that is just as valuable as serving in a formal volunteer position. Showing up to the alumni event, giving yourself the chance to reconnect with sisters. So finding those events when they pop up on social media or they're on our website, RSVP, yes, and show up. And that is the way that you can remain connected and build that network.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Also, in speaking of connections between sisters, I'm actually moving to the city where Emma lives now, and so Emma and I are connecting on that piece. Like, I would have never gotten to do that if Emma and I didn't know each other through Gamma Phi.
And I'm just so excited. I feel like I'm getting another friend in the city. Lex and I are going to hit up the town. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
Yeah. You cannot. Yeah. That is amazing.
The beauty of these continued relationships. But like to speak to our listeners, I wouldn't have met Emma if I didn't volunteer. Like Emma and I would have never come across each other.
They would be just another human, another name. And yeah, this has been so amazing even to just meet Lex. I feel like in getting a friendship here, there's so many ways you can get involved and meet people and grow your network professionally, personally. Everything, yes, to what Autumn said, for sure.
Totally.
Well, It's so interesting too. Your volunteer experience is really the ideal and what we want to create for alumni, because it used to be that women that were volunteering were often not working outside the home because that wasn't accessible to women outside the home. And so now we have volunteers that are doing all of the things and the volunteer roles that have traditionally been offered are just not conducive to working women, to women that are, doing other things in life. And so having these time-bound, project-focused volunteer roles is like the sweet spot for volunteering, because you can come in, share your gift, make really meaningful connections, and then have positive regard for the volunteering experience, as opposed to signing your soul away for years on end. Sure. Case in point right here, I take responsibility for being that person, but that's not really how most people interface with the organization. And it's also not what we expect of most people to provide Gamma Phi Beta. It's just not reasonable.
There are ways to fit it to your lifestyle. It's amazing.
Yeah. Autumn, we're heading to the tail end of our time together today. Emma, do you have any other questions before we jump into our rapid fires?
No, I am ready for the rapid fire, and I cannot wait to hear these answers.
Fantastic. So you're a listener of the podcast, Autumn, so I'm not going to explain this to you. I'm going to explain this for maybe a new listener for this episode. Yep. So our rapid fire questions are sort of mocked after the Inside the Actors Studios, the questions that James Lipton asks at the end of every episode. And the idea is to just ask like very quick, short questions to our guests and collect a bunch of really cool answers to these very short, quick questions. So Autumn, our first question for you. What Gamma Phi Beta value resonates most with you? Love, labor, learning, or loyalty?
Learning.
I'm shocked by this answer.
This might be one of our first learnings. We've had
I think it is.
Yeah.
We've had love and labor, I think, are the two most popular.
Yeah.
I want an infographic of this by the time we're done, by the way. Like that would be very fun.
That idea.
No, because for me, it's like learning and I never hear anyone say it. And I was like,
you and me, Emma, we're in it.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Amazing. All right. What is something that's brought you joy this week?
Probably my daughters. My girls are 6.5 and just figuring out the world, and it is a delight. I mean, yesterday, one of my daughters, without recognizing the implications of this, shared that she figured out how to sign Dad's name in her homework log. It got me good. I had such a good, we were laughing. And I always told him, I'm like, your signature is like 2 lines. You got to fix that before they start forging. And, then we explained why it's great that you did that, because yes, you did complete your homework. And that's actually something that we don't do as a practice. And she was just mortified. It's like, it's okay. But, she was so proud.
I forged Daddy's signature.
It's so cute.
Yes, she's like, look at me. And I'm like, she actually did, and quite well. So we probably need to level up your signature skills there.
Yeah.
Right, maybe some reevaluation there. It could just be redirected.
Autumn, what is something new that you've learned?
I've been doing a lot of research on the concept of emotional labor.
Ooh.
So this is a really one of the elements of leadership for women, I think, is really dynamic and important to explore is where the intersection of emotional labor and leadership exists. Emotional labor is the ability to adapt your own feeling state in service to another. Oftentimes that labor is not monetized, it's not rewarded, it's seen as a characteristic rather than a task or function. So counselors have figured out how to capitalize on emotional labor, but most often women and also marginalized women are really taking the onus of emotional labor. So learning a lot about that and how it shows up in my own life and how to shed light on it for others.
That's a good one to be aware of too. I think sometimes maybe it comes naturally or it's a little clunky, but yeah, having that awareness of it, I think is very important as well. What is something that you would tell your college self?
I would tell my college self to expect more for yourself from others.
Ooh, yes.
I love that. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I think that my college self was really okay expecting the bare minimum from some folks and kind of accommodating in ways that I didn't need to accommodate. The idea that my feelings matter, that my experiences and needs matter. So expect a little bit more of other people and know that it's okay to have boundaries that protect your worthiness and well-being.
That's real. I think you're also talking to college Lex too.
I was going to say
that struck a very powerful moment here.
Like college, the inner child, we're all like growing down.
You watched Emma and I just shrink away from the campus.
We can take that offline. So yeah.
Okay. You kind of alluded to this already, but I'd love to get a little bit more of the story. What was the moment that you chose Gamma Phi?
Yeah, I talked a little bit earlier about that time when, the chapter saw a PG-13 movie so that I could be included. That was absolutely a moment where I chose Gamma Phi. I think too, just so many small moments that added up. But I remember distinctly one night, I didn't really party. I didn't drink alcohol. And I remember my freshman year that on a Friday night, there were a few seniors going to the library, which, I don't think that was a regular occurrence for them. They were very academic and scholarly, but they were like, of course you're going to join us. And so we all went to the library on a Friday night and studied. And, it was in the first few weeks of my time on campus. And I felt like I belonged. Here were these women that were older that I respected and admired that brought me along. And I had plans on a Friday night. Granted, they were in the library, but it was nice to be included and to also feel like I didn't have to compromise who I was in order to belong. So that was something I still look back on and have snippets of these moments that I'll cherish for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It almost goes back to what you were saying a moment ago of like expecting more from people. Like if you give them that opportunity, that these seniors, like if you had maybe expected more, they would have met that expectation. And in this instance, they totally like exceeded expectations because you hadn't considered that. That's beautiful.
Those nights are great. That reminds me of, it was winter semester, syllabus week, and my best friend in my pledge class and it was the Saturday of syllabus week, and we were the only two people in the library Saturday night. It was like night of the museum. We were just roaming around, finding things in the Pius Library. It was great. It was
and you
great.
live to tell the story.
Yeah, right. Look at me now.
Yes.
That's great. Good stuff. Okay. We've kind of talked about this as well, but just to sort of retouch upon it, what was one moment in Gamma Phi that prepared you for where you are today?
I can think of one moment very distinctly as a chapter president where a member on a Friday night was having a mental health crisis. And I remember feeling so ill-equipped to support her and really at a loss other than just to be with her. And I think that that's a moment that I'll always remember because as a leader, you want to be able to fix things or solve things. And I couldn't in that moment. I could just support and be present and follow up and offer resources. But it also, I carry that with me because I think about what our chapter presidents face day in, day out. And what we ask of them is no small feat to hold the chapter in their heart and in their mind for a year, knowing that being a woman is hard, being a college-aged woman is hard. So I often think about what we ask of them and what is reasonable and how we make sure that they are supported and cared for in their roles as leaders.
That's an incredibly powerful connection to the work that you're doing now, like thinking about like college aged Autumn all the way to current Autumn. That's incredibly powerful. And it, I think, speaks to legislative leadership you're kind of talking about, where it's like being a leader doesn't always mean that you're actively solving the problem. Sometimes it means you're just there creating a space for this person to be in. And that's really powerful, Autumn. Okay, we've got one last question for you. If you could nominate any person in the world for membership to Gamma Phi Beta, who would it be?
So I'm a big Brene Brown fan, but I believe she's already been recommended.
I think she's already been
prior episodes. So knowing that this was a question coming, I think I was trying to think of someone that was maybe a bit more unusual. So I would go with Mary Walker. She lived before Gamma Phi Beta was an organization, but we have a children's book called Mary Can Wear Pants. And she was a phenomenal pioneer in lots of different ways. At a young age, she started wearing pants in the 1830s, which was unbelievable. But she became a surgeon in her lifetime and did some really impressive things in her life, and also had a lineage of female descendants that went on to do amazing things. So I'd say Mary Walker. I'm a big fan. Check out that book. She's definitely worth considering for membership, though she did predate our founders. The other person I would say probably guilty pleasure is Taylor Swift. I mean, the woman has really changed economies and what she has done this year alone. And so I appreciate her messaging and just think that she would really make things like convention a blast. So
absolutely. That would be a time.
Yes.
Thank you, Autumn, for joining us today and sharing all of your life experiences and pearls of wisdom. It was such an honor, and we will catch you all next time on True and Constant. True and Constant is brought to you by Gamma Phi Beta Sorority. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving a gift to the 150th by going to gammaphibeta.org/150/podcast. Special thanks to our co-hosts, Emma Remus and Lex Stewart. Jessica Bujanowski for the True Connection segment. Our editor, John Haight, and executive producers, Megan Kruger and Shauna Wilson. Our theme music, Panko Breaded Pork Chops, written by Michael Thomas Gager, performed and produced by Mikey Gager. Thank you for listening.